The darkness of space was broken by something Earth had never seen before. 12 massive alien ships dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's moon, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the starfield. Each vessel was the size of a small city, covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and move in the light. Admiral Kim Tae-ho had been enjoying his morning coffee aboard humanity's newest flagship, the Indomitable, when the proximity alarm started screaming. Now he stood on the bridge watching through the main viewport as the alien fleet arranged itself in a perfect diamond formation. Every movement was precise, calculated, like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. "Sir, they're not responding to our standard greeting protocols," reported Communications Officer Park Min-ho, his young face pale with nervous excitement. This was humanity's first real contact with an advanced alien civilization, and nobody quite knew what to expect. "Keep trying," Kim Tae-ho ordered, though something about the aliens' formation made his military instincts prickle with unease. These weren't explorers or diplomats. This was a show of force. The bridge's main screen suddenly flickered to life and gasps echoed throughout the command center. A figure materialized in the holographic display, tall and imposing with skin that looked like living crystal. His features were sharp and angular, almost geometric, and when he moved, light seemed to dance across his translucent surface like aurora in a winter sky. "I am Chancellor Vextar of the Galactic Trade Council," the being announced, his voice carrying harmonics that made the deck plates vibrate. Behind him, 11 other aliens stood in perfect symmetry, each one representing a different species. There was a creature that looked like it was made of flowing metal, another with 6 arms and compound eyes like a massive insect, and something that appeared to be pure energy contained in a humanoid shell. Ambassador Park Ji-won quickly stepped forward from her position near the communications station. She had been Earth's top diplomat for over a decade, skilled at reading people and situations. But this was unlike any negotiation she had ever faced. "Chancellor Vextar," she said with a respectful bow, "humanity welcomes you to our solar system. We are honored by your presence." The crystal being's expression didn't change. His features seemed incapable of showing emotion, as if they were carved from stone. "Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel," he stated as if reading from an official document. "This technological milestone grants you the privilege of joining galactic civilization under the protection of the Trade Council." Captain Lee, Dong-wook standing at the tactical station, exchanged a quick glance with Dr. Choi Hyejin, the fleet's chief scientist. Something about the way Vextar said protection didn't sound particularly protective. "That's wonderful news," Park Ji-won replied carefully. "We've always dreamed of joining a larger galactic community. What exactly does this protection involve?" Vextar's crystalline head tilted slightly, and for a moment the light playing across his features seemed almost amused. "The arrangement is quite simple and has served the galaxy well for over 50,000 years. Each protected species contributes to the common good of all civilized worlds." "And what would humanity's contribution be?" the ambassador asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer wouldn't be pleasant. 90% of all technological innovations developed by your species will be transferred to Council oversight for proper distribution throughout the galaxy," Vextar announced, as casually as if he were discussing the weather. "Additionally, 50% of your planetary resources will be allocated to support the greater galactic infrastructure." The bridge fell completely silent. Even the usual hum of the ship's systems seemed muted. Captain Lee felt his hands clench into fists at his sides. Dr. Choi's tablet slipped from her fingers and clattered to the deck. "Excuse me," Park Ji-won said, her diplomatic training the only thing keeping her voice level. "Did you say 90% of our innovations and half of our resources?" "Correct. This is the standard protection agreement offered to all developing species upon achieving interstellar capability." Vextar gestured to his companions. "Each of our member civilizations began their galactic journey with similar arrangements. It is simply how things are done." Admiral Kim stepped forward, his weathered face hard with controlled anger. "And if we refuse this generous offer?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Vextar's expression remained unchanged, but somehow his presence became more menacing. "Refusal would be unfortunate. Your vessels would be denied access to all established trade routes. Your exploration missions would be turned away from every civilized system. Your species would exist in complete isolation until you reconsidered. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. History shows that isolated species rarely survive long in the hostile environment of deep space. Pirates, natural disasters, resource depletion. The galaxy is a dangerous place for those without proper protection. Dr. Choi bent to retrieve her tablet, her scientific mind already racing through the implications. If what this alien was saying was true, humanity had just discovered they lived in a galaxy-spanning protection racket. Every species that achieved space travel was essentially forced to pay tribute to these self-appointed overlords. How long do we have to consider your offer? Park Ji-won asked, buying time to think. 30 galactic standard days, Vextar replied. That should be sufficient time for your leaders to recognize the wisdom of cooperation. The hologram began to fade, but the Chancellor's final words echoed clearly. We trust you will make the correct decision. The alternative would be regrettable for all involved. As the alien images disappeared, the bridge remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Captain Lee spoke up, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. They're not offering protection. They're demanding tribute. Dr. Choi looked up from her tablet, where she had been frantically taking notes. If their claims are accurate, we're looking at a system that spans thousands of worlds. They've turned the entire galaxy into their personal empire. Admiral Kim stared out at the alien fleet, still maintaining their perfect formation like silent sentinels. 30 days, he murmured. They're giving us 30 days to decide whether humanity will bow down or stand up. Park Ji-won was already activating her secure communication link to Earth's government. This decision was far too important for any one person to make. But deep in her heart, she already knew what humanity's answer would be. They hadn't struggled for millennia to reach the stars just to hand over their freedom to cosmic bullies. The next 30 days would determine whether humanity would join the galaxy as free beings or as subjects in someone else's empire. 29. Days had passed since Chancellor Vextar's ultimatum, and the alien fleet had returned to Earth's orbit exactly on schedule. The crystalline being materialized once again on the bridge of the Indomitable, his translucent features reflecting the same cold indifference as before. He clearly expected to find humanity ready to grovel and beg for mercy. Instead, he found Ambassador Park Ji-won standing calmly in the center of the bridge holding a small ceramic pot containing a delicate flowering tree. The tiny pink blossom seemed almost fragile against the backdrop of the massive alien warships visible through the viewport. Chancellor Vextar, Park said with a genuine smile, bowing slightly in greeting. Thank you for returning as promised. We have something for you. She held up the potted plant, its branches swaying gently in the bridge's recycled air. These are cherry blossoms from Earth. In our culture, they represent the beauty of things that don't last forever. We thought you might appreciate the symbolism. Vexatar's geometric features shifted slightly, the closest thing to confusion his crystal face could manage. The gesture was so unexpected, so completely outside his experience that for a moment he seemed unsure how to respond. You have prepared a gift, he said slowly, his harmonic voice carrying a note of uncertainty. This means you have decided to accept our protection terms? Park Ji-won's smile grew even warmer and she shook her head gently. Actually, no. We've decided to respectfully decline your kind offer. We truly appreciate the thought behind it, but humanity has chosen to forge its own path among the stars. The silence that followed was so complete that Captain Han Min-ho, standing at his post near the weapons console, could hear his own heartbeat. He had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from grinning at the alien's obvious bewilderment. In all his centuries of existence, Vextar had clearly never encountered anyone who responded to his demands with polite refusal and gardening gifts. You refuse? The Chancellor's voice carried harmonics of disbelief. Do you not comprehend the consequences of your decision? Your species will be cut off from galactic civilization. You will be alone in a hostile universe. Park set the cherry blossom tree on a nearby console and clasped her hands behind her back, maintaining her diplomatic posture. We understand the Consequences perfectly, Chancellor. We also understand that true respect cannot be purchased with submission or tribute. Perhaps your council might consider a different approach in the future, one based on mutual cooperation and friendship rather than forced payments. The hologram flickered slightly as Vextar processed this incomprehensible response. Cooperation? You are a primitive species that has barely achieved interstellar travel. What could you possibly offer to civilizations that have ruled the galaxy for millennia? Fresh perspectives, Park replied without hesitation. New ideas, different ways of looking at old problems. Innovation doesn't always come from the most advanced civilizations, Chancellor. Sometimes it comes from those who haven't learned that certain things are supposed to be impossible. Vexitar's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with what might have been anger or frustration. You will regret this decision. When your ships are turned away from every civilized world, when your people face the darkness of space alone, you will remember this moment. Perhaps, Park acknowledged calmly, but at least we'll face that darkness as free beings, not as servants. The hologram vanished abruptly, and within minutes, the massive alien fleet began moving away from Earth's orbital space. Their departure was as precise and coordinated as their arrival, but this time there was something different about their formation. It looked less like a display of power and more like a retreat. As soon as the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, the bridge erupted into controlled activity. General Song Yuna appeared on the main screen from her command center on Earth's moon, her weathered face showing the strain of the past month. All secure channels are now active, she announced. Operation Friendly Neighbor is a go. What Chancellor Vextar and his council didn't know was that humanity had spent those 30 days doing what humans did better than perhaps any other species in the galaxy, making friends. While the aliens had expected them to cower in fear or frantically prepare defenses, humanity had instead reached out across the stars with curiosity and open hands. Commander O.J. Sung had been particularly busy during those weeks. His small exploration ship, the Wanderer, had visited 17 different star systems along the galactic rim, making first contact with species that the Council probably didn't even know existed. Each conversation had revealed the same disturbing pattern. The stories are all identical, O reported from his ship's bridge, his face serious on the communication screen. Every species that achieves faster than light travel gets the same visit, the same ultimatum, the same impossible choice. Most of them have been paying tribute for so long they've forgotten what independence feels like. Dr. Choi pulled up star charts on her tablet, marking each system where O had made contact. The Zephyrians have been giving up half their agricultural output for 3 centuries. The Kalathi hand over their mining profits to the Council every year. The Vorthan craftsmen work primarily to fill Council orders, with barely enough left over to support their own people. Captain Han studied the growing network of red dots on the galactic map. How many species are we talking about? Hundreds, maybe thousands, Dr. Choi replied. And that's just in this one spiral arm of the galaxy. If the pattern holds across all of Council space, we're looking at the biggest protection racket in galactic history. Admiral Kim finished grimly. He stood up from his command chair and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars that suddenly seemed less empty and more full of suffering. The beautiful part, General Song said from the moon base, is that they're so confident in their system, they never bothered to check if their victims might want to do something about it. They've ruled through fear and isolation for so long they can't imagine anyone fighting back. Commander O's image leaned forward on the screen. Sir, you should know that when I explained humanity's situation to the other species, their reactions were interesting. The Kalathi elder actually laughed. She said she wished her people had your courage when the Council first came to them. And now? Park Ji-won asked. Now they're asking questions they haven't asked in generations. Questions like, what if we said no? And what if we worked together? Admiral Kim turned back to face his officers, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. They think we're just another primitive species having a tantrum. They have no idea that we've spent the last month building the foundation for something they've never seen before. Dr. Choi looked up from her calculations. A voluntary alliance of free species working together by choice rather than compulsion. They literally can't comprehend it because it's never existed in their experience. Let them keep thinking we're just stubborn children, the Admiral said. Underestimation has always been humanity's greatest tactical advantage. By the time they realize what we're really doing, it'll be too late to stop us. Outside the Indomitable's viewports, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its children had just fired the first shot in a revolution that would reshape the galaxy forever. 6 months had passed since humanity's bold refusal of the Council's demands, and across the galaxy, something unprecedented was happening. In the Grand Council chambers on their homeworld of Nexus Prime, emergency meetings were becoming a daily occurrence. The massive crystalline structure that housed their government was buzzing with activity as reports flooded in from every corner of their territory. Councillor Zephys, a tall, bird-like creature with iridescent feathers and sharp golden eyes, stood before the assembled council members. Her wings rustled with agitation as she activated the holographic display, showing dozens of star systems across the galaxy. "Fellow councillors," she began, her voice carrying the musical quality of her avian species, "we are witnessing something that has never occurred in our 50,000 years of galactic governance. Multiple species under our protection are showing technological advancement rates that should be impossible." The display zoomed in on a blue-green world in the outer rim. The Kalathi, who have been faithfully providing tribute for 8 centuries, have somehow developed energy shield technology that rivals our own. Their defensive capabilities have increased by over 400% in just 6 months. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Chancellor Vextar, his crystalline features reflecting the light from the holographic display, leaned forward in his throne-like seat. "Zephys, the Kalathi are skilled engineers, but they've never shown innovation beyond basic improvements to existing technology. How is this possible?" The display shifted to show a rocky, mineral-rich planet surrounded by massive space stations. The Morden Mining Consortium has similarly upgraded their operations. Their extraction efficiency has tripled, and they're using techniques we've never seen before. They're pulling rare elements from asteroid belts that were previously considered impossible to mine. Another counselor, a being made of flowing metallic substance called flux iron, spoke with a voice like grinding gears. "Perhaps they've discovered new deposits or developed techniques independently. Innovation does occur naturally even among primitive species. That's what we initially thought," Zephys replied, her feathers darkening with worry. "But it's not just 2 species. We're seeing similar advancements across 47 different worlds. The probability of simultaneous independent development is mathematically impossible." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For millennia, the Council had maintained control by keeping their subject species technologically dependent. They provided just enough knowledge to keep civilizations functional, but never enough to become truly independent. This sudden surge in capability across multiple worlds suggested something far more troubling. Chancellor Vextar's expression remained impassive, but his voice carried a note of irritation. "These are simply growing pains. Every few centuries, some species attempts to assert independence. We increase their tribute requirements and they remember their place in the galactic order." What the Council didn't know was that at that very moment, on a small transport ship traveling through the supposedly empty space between star systems, Engineer Yoon Seri was reviewing technical blueprints with a group of alien scientists. Her ship, disguised as a simple cargo hauler, had been making these trips for months. "The key to this shield design," she explained to the fascinated Kalathi engineers gathered around her portable workstation, "is the harmonic frequency modulation. Instead of trying to block energy attacks with brute force, you redirect the energy through dimensional phase shifting." The lead Kalathi engineer, a 6-limbed being with large compound eyes, studied the blueprints with obvious excitement. "This is revolutionary. Our people have been trying to solve this problem for generations. You're just giving this to us?" Yoon smiled warmly. "Knowledge belongs to everyone. On Earth, we believe that when one species advances, we all benefit. The galaxy is big enough for everyone to prosper. Meanwhile, in another part of space, Dr. Kang Ji-hwan was putting the finishing touches on a communication relay, hidden inside what appeared to be a simple asteroid. This was the 43rd such relay he had installed, creating a network that would allow instant communication between dozens of worlds without the Council's knowledge. The beauty of this system, he explained to his assistant engineer Park Haisu, is that it looks like natural background radiation to their sensors. They've been so focused on monitoring official communication channels that they never thought to look for signals embedded in cosmic noise. The relay activated with a soft hum, immediately connecting to similar devices scattered across the galaxy. Within minutes, species that had been isolated from each other for centuries were sharing information, ideas, and hope. On the desert planet of Kethmora, Captain Lim Soo-jin sat in a dimly lit underground chamber with local resistance leaders. The Kethans were a proud people who had been reduced to little more than slaves in their own minds, forced to extract rare minerals that fueled the Council's war machine while their own children went hungry. The Kethan leader, Vorth An, was a weathered being whose scales had been scarred by decades of hard labor. He studied the technical specifications Lim had brought with obvious suspicion. "I don't understand," he said, his voice rough from years of breathing mining dust. "You're offering us advanced excavation technology, improved safety systems even, medical treatments for mineral poisoning. What do you want in return? What's the real price?" Lim leaned back in her chair, meeting his gaze directly. "Friendship. That's it. We believe that free people working together can accomplish more than any empire built on fear and tribute." Vorthan's scarred features showed disbelief. "In 800 years of council rule, no one has ever offered us anything without demanding payment. Why should we trust you?" "Because," Lim replied simply, "we know what it's like to be threatened by bullies. 6 months ago, the council tried to make humanity pay tribute too. We said no. Now we're offering the same choice to everyone else." The chamber fell silent as the Kethan leaders absorbed this information. Finally, Vorthan spoke again, his voice carrying a note of something that had been absent for generations: hope. "If we accept your help, if we refuse to pay tribute, the Council will send their fleets. Our people will die." "Maybe," Lim acknowledged, "but maybe they won't. And maybe, if enough of us stand together, they'll realize that their age of domination is over." Back on Earth, Admiral Beck Inho stood in the war room beneath the Lunar Command Center, surrounded by star charts that told a story the Council couldn't yet comprehend. What had begun as simple humanitarian assistance was evolving into something unprecedented in galactic history. "Status report," he called to his staff. Commander Kim Jae-min looked up from his console. 47 worlds now have access to our technology-sharing network. 18 species have formally declared their intention to reduce tribute payments. The Kalathi have announced they're keeping 60% of their mining output for their own people. And the Council's response? Predictable. They're increasing tribute demands across the board, thinking they can intimidate everyone back into submission. Admiral Bayek studied the holographic display showing the growing network of allied worlds. They still don't understand what they're facing. For 50,000 years, they've ruled through divide-and-conquer tactics. Keep everyone isolated, dependent, and afraid. They literally cannot comprehend the idea of voluntary cooperation between equals. Dr. Choi Hee-jin, now serving as coordinator for the technology sharing program, activated another display showing resource flows across the galaxy. "The most beautiful part is that we're not conquering anyone or demanding anything in return. We're just offering friendship and knowledge. Species that have been enemies for centuries are starting to work together because they realize they have a common oppressor." "How long before the Council figures out what's really happening?" asked the Admiral. "At their current rate of understanding?" Dr. Choi smiled. "By the time they realize this isn't just a few rebellious worlds having tantrums, it'll be too late to stop us." Outside the command center, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, unaware that its children were orchestrating the largest liberation movement in galactic history, one act of kindness at a time. The day that would later be remembered as the Great Refusal began like any other tribute collection day in Council history. Massive fleets of crystalline vessels emerged from hyperspace simultaneously, across hundreds of star systems, their commanders expecting the usual routine of cowering planetary leaders begging for mercy while transferring their wealth to council coffers. Instead, they found something that had never occurred in 50,000 years of galactic domination: closed communication channels, empty spaceports, and defensive formations where there should have been submission. Counselor Thexim, the insectoid commander of the Hive Collective's tribute fleet, stood in his command chamber watching his screens with growing disbelief. His compound eyes processed information faster than most species could think, but what he was seeing made no sense according to everything he understood about how the galaxy worked. Fleet Commander, his communications officer buzzed in the harmonic language of their species. The Kalathi homeworld is refusing to acknowledge our presence. They've activated planetary shields and are requesting that we leave their space immediately. Thexim's mandibles clicked together in confusion. The Kalathi have never possessed planetary shield technology. How is this possible? Sir, we're receiving similar reports from the Morden system, the Zephyrian colonies, and over 30 other worlds. They're all refusing tribute collection and demanding we withdraw. The Hive Commander's exoskeleton darkened with what his species displayed as extreme agitation. He immediately opened emergency channels to the Council homeworld, his message crackling across subspace with urgent harmonics. Council Command, this is Fleet Commander Thexim reporting a coordinated rebellion across multiple systems. The tributary species are refusing compliance and displaying technology levels far beyond their known capabilities. The response from Chancellor Vextar came within minutes, his crystalline voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. Commander, repeat your report. Did you say multiple systems are refusing tribute? Confirmed, Chancellor. Over 400 worlds have declared independence simultaneously. They're using human terminology, claiming rights to self-determination and freedom of choice. The corruption has spread far beyond what we initially calculated. In the Grand Council chambers on Nexus Prime, chaos erupted like nothing seen in millennia. The 12 species that had ruled the galaxy since before recorded history found themselves facing a crisis that challenged the very foundation of their power. Counselor Axmoth of the reptilian Saurians rose from his seat, his massive scaled form towering over the chamber. His species had been enforcers for the Council for thousands of years, and the concept of widespread rebellion was personally offensive to him. This is exactly what I warned against, he roared, his voice echoing off the crystalline walls. We should have eliminated the humans the moment they refused our protection. Now they've infected half the galaxy with their poisonous ideas about equality and independence. Counselor Nexara, whose energy being form flickered with agitation, materialized near the central podium. The situation is worse than simple rebellion. Our intelligence reports indicate the humans aren't conquering these species or demanding tribute for themselves. They're actually teaching them to think independently, to defend themselves, to cooperate as equals. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 50,000 years, the Council had maintained power through a simple principle: keep everyone isolated, dependent, and afraid. The idea of species voluntarily working together without hierarchy or tribute was completely outside their understanding. Chancellor. Vextar's crystalline features reflected the chamber's lights as he processed the scope of the crisis. How many ships do we have available for immediate deployment? Every member species is mobilizing their fleets as ordered, reported military. Coordinator Zenthak. Conservative estimates put our combined forces at 50,000, and vessels with ground troops numbering in the billions. Then we end this rebellion before it spreads further, Vextar declared. The humans have forgotten their place in the natural order. We will remind them. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Ro Min-jung stood before an emergency session of the United Earth Council, her face illuminated by the glow of incoming reports from across the galaxy. The Situation Room had been buzzing with activity for hours, as confirmation after confirmation arrived of species declaring independence from Council rule. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced to the assembled world leaders, 6 months ago, we stood alone against the Council's demands. Today we are no longer alone. Over 400 worlds have chosen to stand with us in the fight for galactic freedom. The chamber erupted in a mixture of celebration and concern. Defense Minister Kim Young-soo raised his hand for attention. Madam President, while this is encouraging news, our intelligence indicates the Council is mobilizing everything they have. We're looking at the largest military force in galactic history. Fleet Admiral Park Hae-won activated the main tactical display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with red markers indicating Council fleet positions and blue markers showing allied worlds. The difference in numbers was sobering. Our conservative estimates put the Council's combined fleet at 50,000 warships, she reported. They're pulling vessels from every corner of their territory, including ships that haven't seen combat in centuries. And our combined forces? Asked President Rowe. Approximately 8,000 ships from all allied species combined. The Kalathi have contributed their mining vessels retrofitted with defensive systems. The Morden have converted cargo haulers into troop transports, and dozens of other species are contributing whatever they have. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of impossible odds. Even with all their new allies, the rebellion was outnumbered more than 6-1. Foreign Minister Lee Sang-ho spoke up from his seat near the back of the chamber. Are we certain about this path? Perhaps there's still time for negotiation, for finding a middle ground. President Rowe looked out at the faces of Earth's leaders, seeing the same mixture of fear and determination she felt in her own heart. 6 months ago, we could have chosen the easy path. We could have given up 90% of our innovations and half our resources to buy temporary peace. But we knew that wasn't really peace, it was just a slower form of death. She gestured to the display showing their allied worlds. Every species that has joined us had the same choice. They could have continued living on their knees, or they could stand up and fight for the right to determine their own futures. They chose to stand. Admiral Park pulled up tactical projections on her screen. The Council's strategy will likely be overwhelming force applied simultaneously across multiple fronts. They'll expect us to scatter and defend individual worlds, allowing them to defeat us piecemeal. But we're not going to give them that satisfaction, President Rowe said with a grim smile. Alert all Allied commanders. It's time to show the galaxy what free people can accomplish when they work together. Defense Minister Kim activated the emergency communication network that Dr. Kang had spent months establishing. All stations. This is Earth Command. Operation Freedom Dawn is now active. Repeat, Operation Freedom Dawn is active. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, species that had never imagined they could be free began preparing for the fight of their lives. The Council had superior numbers and ancient technology, but the rebellion had something the galaxy hadn't seen in 50,000 years. People fighting not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. The battle for galactic freedom was about to begin. The Battle of Saul began at dawn on Earth, though in the vast darkness of space, dawn was just another human concept that the galaxy was about to learn had more power than anyone imagined. Admiral Hong Sung-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship New Dawn, watching his tactical displays with calm determination as the largest fleet in galactic history took defensive positions around humanity's home system. It wasn't just a human fleet. Ships from over 300 different species formed concentric rings around Earth, their hulls painted with the symbol of the newly formed Galactic Liberation Alliance, a circle of stars with no one star larger than another. Kalathi, mining ships retrofitted with human shield technology, flew alongside Morden cargo vessels, converted into mobile weapons platforms. Zephyrian science ships shared formation space with Altarian fighters whose pilots had chosen freedom over ancient loyalty. Sir, reported Communications Officer Kim Jae-ho, we're getting final confirmations from all battle groups. 317 species are ready to stand with us. Admiral Hong nodded, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Never before had so many different races voluntarily fought together as equals. The Council's fleets had always been composed of dominant species commanding lesser ones, but this was something entirely new. All ships, this is Admiral Hong, he broadcast across all frequencies, his voice carrying to bridge crews speaking hundreds of different languages. Today we don't fight for conquest, tribute, or empire. We fight for something much more powerful, the right of every thinking being to choose their own destiny. As if summoned by his words, space itself seemed to tear apart as the Council's armada emerged from hyperspace. 50,000 ships materialized in perfect formation, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. The fleet was a monument to 50 millennia of galactic domination, representing every species that had ever bowed to Council authority. Chancellor Vextar's image appeared on screens throughout the Liberation Fleet, his crystalline features as cold and unfeeling as ever. Admiral Hong, you are vastly outnumbered. This rebellion ends now. Surrender immediately, and your species will be granted clemency for this misunderstanding. Captain Seo Hyun-woo, commanding the human carrier Liberator, actually smiled as he heard the Chancellor's words. His flight deck was launching fighters piloted by volunteers from dozens of species, each one fighting not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. Chancellor, he replied over the open channel, you still don't understand what you're facing. We're not fighting your war of domination and submission anymore. We're fighting for something you've never encountered, free people working together by choice. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for generations, not for its tactics or technology, but for what it represented. The Council's forces, trained for centuries to intimidate and suppress helpless worlds, found themselves facing something they had never encountered: coordinated resistance from beings fighting for their freedom rather than their lives. The Kalathi, shields enhanced with human harmonic technology, created barriers that turned the mighty Saurian assault ships into floating scrap metal, Morden mining vessels. Their holds filled with modified asteroid mining charges became devastating siege weapons that broke through Council battle lines like paper. Zephyrian atmospheric fighters, designed for scientific research, swarmed around. Massive Council dreadnoughts like angry insects, their small size making them nearly impossible to target. But the real turning point came when Commander Jin Woo-sung led a multi-species strike force directly at the Council's command vessel. His squadron included Kalathi engineers, Morden pilots, and human tacticians, all working together with a coordination that the hierarchical Council forces couldn't match. Target their command structure, Jin ordered as his mixed fleet approached, the massive Council flagship. Remember, we're not here to destroy them, we're here to free them. As the strike force closed in, Chancellor Vextar's final transmission carried something that hadn't been heard in his voice for millennia: uncertainty, confusion, and perhaps even fear. This is not how the galaxy works, he whispered, his crystalline voice cracking as his ancient worldview crumbled around him. Admiral Hong's response echoed across the battlefield. No, Chancellor, this is how the galaxy should work. The battle ended not with the complete destruction of the Council forces, but with their surrender. Faced with the choice between annihilation and joining the revolution, thousands of Council ships simply stopped fighting. Their crews, many of whom had never questioned the system they served, began asking questions that had been forbidden for millennia. 6 months later, the galaxy looked completely different. Ambassador Park Ji-won stood before the inaugural session of the Galactic Cooperation Assembly, held in a massive space station built cooperatively by dozens of species. The chamber was filled with representatives from over 800 worlds, each with an equal voice regardless of their technological level, military strength, or economic power. Fellow beings, she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast assembly hall. The age of tribute and subjugation is officially over. Today begins the age of cooperation, where every species contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. Dr. Choi Hye-jin, now serving as the Assembly's chief science coordinator, watched from the gallery as former enemies sat side by side. Saurian warriors shared technical data with Kalathi engineers. Altarian scholars collaborated with Morden miners on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Many former Council species struggled to adapt to a system where ancient privilege meant nothing and actual contribution meant everything, but they were adapting, learning to create value rather than simply taking it from others. On Earth, President Ro Min-jung received daily reports from the Galactic Integration Committee. The numbers were staggering and growing every day. Madam, President, reported Secretary of Galactic Affairs Lee Sang-min. We're receiving requests from over 1,000 systems to join the assembly. Species we've never even heard of are declaring independence from local tyrants and asking for support in establishing their own democratic governments. The president smiled, looking out her office window at the night sky. The stars no longer seemed distant and threatening, but welcoming and full of possibility. Then I suppose we'd better get to work. The galaxy won't liberate itself. As she spoke, the cherry blossom tree that Ambassador Park had given to Chancellor Vextar all those months ago bloomed in the corner of her office. The delicate pink flower served as a reminder of how the most beautiful things in life were often the most fragile, and how sometimes the greatest victories came not from force or intimidation, but from the simple revolutionary act of treating others with dignity and respect. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven that their greatest weapon was never their technology or military might, but their radical belief that every thinking being deserved freedom, dignity, and the chance to reach their full potential. That belief had spread across the stars like wildfire, and now it could never be extinguished. The age of cooperation had begun,